snowshoes. So, if you're reading this, then you survived. Perhaps you even thrived, but if not, that's okay too. It's okay if you scaped by with bruises and wounds, some so visible and some so deep that no one will ever see. It's okay if you're different now, changed forever. You survived, and that's something to be proud of. As I sit here writing this to my future self, my assumption is that in order to survive, you had to do a lot of things you never thought you would do. So I ask, have you forgiven yourself? I remember the exact moment that I finished writing that letter to myself. My son was 9 months old. We had spent the entire day at the neurologist's office where my worst nightmare as a mother was confirmed. He had had a stroke in utero, and over 2/3 of his brain never formed, didn't exist. It's the doctor's kind of job at that point to give you a worst case scenario, and they do, right? I don't know if he's gonna walk, I don't know if he's gonna talk, I don't know what his life holds. And so I literally came home and I sat in a corner and I cried. I cried for almost 42 hours straight. I cried until I couldn't cry anymore. And I felt everything, right? I felt pissed. I felt sad. I was scared. I was scared for him. I was scared for me, if I'm being honest. I didn't know how this would change our lives. It certainly wasn't what I had expected. So I cried in a corner, and when there were no more tears to cry, I got up, I made a peanut butter sandwich, and I wrote myself that letter. And the funny thing is that I remember at the time thinking to myself, at this point, when you go to seal the envelope, you're going to put all of those feelings that you felt in that corner inside that envelope. And when you seal it, it's gone forever, right? After that, you have to muster. You have to be a champion. You have to be you got to be the leader in seeing that these worst case scenarios aren't going to be that way for your child. So I did. I put the letter in a book, and I honestly forgot all about it. Let me say, my son is 11, and he's amazing, right? Of course, he did not, he's walking, he's talking, he auditioned for a play. He's much more comfortable on a stage than I will ever be. He makes puppets. I mean, there are many, many exciting things about him, and daily he is an inspiration to me. And I have spent a lot of time talking about his story and my part in it. So I'm not going to do that tonight. I'm going to tell you a different story. I'm going to tell you my version of events from my perspective. Before I do that, though, I've got to tell you that when I was growing up, like a young girl, I was like a fiery, feisty feminist, like I didn't even know what the word meant, but I was one, yeah? And I always felt this innate sense of power being a woman. I could walk into any room and, ultimately I would be more powerful because women have a secret. They have a superpower. They have the ability to make life and breath. And that innately gives us power, right? Our uterus is our secret weapon, yeah? Yes, yeah. So I had this secret weapon. I had this superpower And I never intended to use it. No, I was very career-oriented, never thought for a million years that I would have children. So when I had my son, all of that changed, right? Changed my perspective, because I'd used my secret weapon, my superpower. When I got the MRI results that night, for all those tears, do you know that it never once occurred to me that my secret weapon had let me down? Flash forward 3 years from that. My son's 3 at that point, and he's starting to really kind of meet all those milestones that we just talked about, right? He's doing amazing things. And I am pregnant again. So excited. I knew instantly in my gut, right? I knew in my uterus that it was a girl. And I knew she was powerful, and she was strong, and she was amazing, and she was all of those amazing things that women were, because she had a uterus, right? I was so anxious to meet her. I knew when I went to the ultrasound, they were just going to confirm what I already knew, right? That it was a girl. I named her. I named her Sophia. So I go to the ultrasound, and again, I'm just really looking for confirmation at this point. And I got a chance to see her beautiful face, and I was in love instantly, right? I was planning period parties for her. I loved her so much, instantly. And within moments, though, something changed in the room. My son has given me a lot of useful skills. And one of those is being able to read the nonverbal communication between a doctor and a nurse in a room. And know that something wasn't right. And I felt it instantly. The whole mood changed, and I knew something wasn't right. But they didn't say anything, right? They sent me home, and I kept telling people, I know something's not right. And everyone said, you're just really projecting, right? You're projecting your old experience onto this new. It's natural, it's normal, but she's fine. I got a call 2 days later. It's called Epstein's anomaly. And that's a really fancy way to say that her heart was growing too big. Can you imagine that being a problem? Someone's heart is too big. It was a very rare condition. They told me from the beginning that she would, live inside of me. There were never any question about that. But the critical point was after. She had to immediately go into surgery. There was all sorts of things that I had to prepare for in that instant after giving birth. And then, of course, there would be a lifelong, surgeries, doctor visits, therapies. All right, I got this, right? I've done it before. I do it again. I remember the exact moment that she died. I was just in and out of sleep. She was really active, and then all of a sudden, there was no kick. You know how people say sometimes that your heart falls into your feet? I think that's what they mean. I felt the most painful, stabbing grief. And at the same time, if I'm being honest, I felt peace. And it was weird, and it was conflicting, and it didn't make any sense. And oh my God, this can't be happening again. So I pretended it wasn't. And I didn't tell a soul for 2 days. And I secretly was saying to her, give me one kick, right? If you give me one kick, I will move heaven and earth to make your life possible. And she never kicked. My uterus had failed me again. There are a million books on being a mother of a child with special needs, and there are a million more on grieving the loss of a child. And they all have one very important thing in common, and that's they all have a chapter on forgiveness, right? And inevitably, somewhere in that chapter, the author says, you must forgive yourself. I mean, I didn't do anything wrong, so why? That didn't apply to me, right? Why would I have to forgive myself? I didn't drink, do drugs when I'm a vegetarian. Like, how much trouble could I have really been? So I didn't think that applied to me, right? So I skipped that step in the process, and if I'm being honest, I skipped it all up until the point at which 2 weeks before this audition, I move a book in my house, and this letter falls out. And I read it, and I remember what it was like. And I get to the part about forgiving myself, and suddenly it makes sense to me, right? I don't have to forgive myself in the now. I did survive. We all, right? My son is doing well. I didn't have to forgive the me now. I had to forgive that 11-year-old girl in the bathroom who just got her period, who was high-fiving herself because she felt so powerful. I had to forgive the young woman who defined her power by an organ, right? That's not where my power lies. My power is not in my ability to make life and breath. My power was in my ability to forgive my body when it really screws that up. So there are wounds so deep that some may never know. And I did survive. But the minute I decided to forgive here tonight, I thrived.